Marcus Chen had always been good at making mistakes. Back on Earth, he'd mistaken salt for sugar in his grandmother's cookies, accidentally joined the debate team instead of the drama club, and somehow convinced himself that astrophysics would be easy. Now, standing in the gleaming corridors of Nexus Station, humanity's first diplomatic outpost in alien space, he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. The station buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species conducted trade negotiations, cultural exchanges, and the delicate dance of interstellar diplomacy. Marcus clutched his datapad, reviewing his assignment for the 100th time. As a junior cultural liaison, his job was simple: observe, take notes, and absolutely do not interfere with ongoing negotiations. The grand hall stretched before him like a cathedral of chrome and crystal. Beings from across the galaxy mingled beneath soaring arches that seemed to bend space itself. Marcus recognized some species from his training materials. The graceful Etherians with their luminous skin and flowing robes glided past like living poetry. The imposing Corvan delegates, their metallic exoskeletons gleaming under the artificial suns, commanded respect wherever they walked. Even the plant-like Verdani swayed with an otherworldly beauty that made humans seem clumsy by comparison. Marcus found an observation alcove and activated his recording equipment. The main event today was the Beautification Summit, where species would showcase their most attractive representatives for potential marriage alliances and cultural exchanges. It was politics disguised as a beauty pageant, and Marcus was here to document humanity's first glimpse into this alien tradition. The ceremony began with fanfare that resonated through harmonic frequencies only some species could fully appreciate. One by one, delegates presented their candidates. Each was a masterpiece of their kind's evolution. The Etherian representative seemed to glow from within, their features so perfect they appeared crafted by divine hands. The Corvan candidate's armor was polished to mirror perfection, each plate a work of art. The Verdani swayed in, patterns that spoke of wind through eternal forests. Then came the announcement that made Marcus's blood run cold. Representing the Zephyrian Empire, the ceremony master's translated voice echoed through the hall. "We present Kixandra of the Outer Rim territories." The reaction was immediate and brutal. Gasps of horror rippled through the assembled delegates. Someone actually retched. The beautiful Etherian representative covered their eyes, unable to look. Even the stoic Corvan shifted uncomfortably in their armor. Marcus squinted toward the presentation platform, trying to see what had caused such revulsion. Through the crowd of much taller aliens, he caught glimpses of movement. Something small and dark shuffled across the stage with obvious reluctance. The poor lighting and distance made details impossible to discern. But the crowd's reaction told him everything he needed to know. This Kixandra was apparently so hideous by galactic standards that her very presence was considered an insult. "The stars," whispered a nearby Etherian diplomat to their companion. What were the Zephyrians thinking? Are they trying to sabotage the entire summit? "Perhaps it's a political statement," replied another voice. Showing contempt for the beautification protocols, Marcus felt his heart sink. The Zephyrians were one of the most powerful empires in this sector, controlling several dozen systems and commanding massive fleets. If they were deliberately insulting the summit, it could derail years of careful diplomatic progress. As the ceremony continued, the other candidates were presented with appropriate admiration and political interest. Marriage proposals were floated, alliance discussions began, and the social machinery of galactic politics hummed along smoothly. But Marcus noticed something else happening in the shadows. Kixandra hadn't left the hall. While the other representatives mingled with admirers and potential suitors, she sat alone in a corner alcove, hunched over what appeared to be a small electronic device. The nearest delegates gave her a wide berth, as if her presence might somehow contaminate them. Marcus watched her through his binoculars, trying to understand what made her so repulsive to the other species. From his distant vantage point, she appeared to be roughly humanoid in shape. Though smaller than most of the other delegates, her skin seemed dark, possibly scaled or chitinous, and her posture suggested someone trying to make herself invisible. The more he observed, the angrier he became. Whatever she looked like, the casual cruelty of the other delegates was appalling. She was clearly intelligent, operating that device with quick, precise movements that suggested advanced technical knowledge. She was here as an official representative of a major power, which meant she had to possess significant political or cultural importance. Yet she was being treated like a pariah simply because of her appearance. Marcus glanced around the hall, noting how the various species interacted. The beautiful ones were surrounded by admirers and political opportunists. The merely average received polite acknowledgement. But Kixandra might as well have been invisible for all the attention she received. Except for the occasional disgusted glance thrown in her direction, his grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. "Marcus, honey, sometimes the most beautiful thing you can do is show kindness to someone who needs it most." Before his rational mind could stop him, Marcus was moving. He slipped away from his observation post and made his way through the crowded hall, weaving between towering aliens and hovering trade negotiators. Protocol demanded he remain a silent observer, but Protocol hadn't anticipated witnessing such casual cruelty. As he approached Kixandra's alcove, he got his first clear look at her. She was indeed smaller than most delegates, perhaps only slightly taller than Marcus himself. Her skin was a deep purple-black with subtle iridescent scales that caught the light like oil on water. Her face was angular and sharp-featured, with large eyes that held an unmistakable intelligence. By human standards, she would be considered exotic, certainly, but hardly the monstrosity the other delegates seemed to perceive. She looked up as he approached, and he saw surprise flicker across her features. Her eyes were a startling violet color, and Marcus realized she was actually quite striking in her own way. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper to avoid drawing attention from nearby delegates. "I'm Marcus Chen with the human delegation. I couldn't help but notice you're sitting alone." Kixandra stared at him for a long moment, her expression cycling through confusion, suspicion, and something that might have been hope. When she spoke, her voice was melodious despite the universal translator's mechanical interpretation. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human. Do you not see how the others react to my presence?" Marcus glanced around at the other delegates, who were indeed giving them both a wide berth now that he'd approached her. "I see a lot of shallow people judging someone based on appearances," he replied. "I was raised to believe that's wrong." For the first time since the ceremony began, Kixandra smiled. Kixandra's smile transformed her entire face, and Marcus found himself genuinely charmed by the way her eyes lit up with unexpected warmth. The universal translator couldn't convey the musical quality of her laugh, but something in the sound made him smile in return. "Your species is either remarkably enlightened or completely insane," she said, gesturing for him to sit beside her on the curved bench. "I have not decided which." Marcus settled beside her, acutely aware of the shocked stares they were receiving from passing delegates. An Etherian couple actually changed direction mid-stride to avoid walking too close to them. "Probably a bit of both," he admitted. "We're still pretty new to all this galactic civilization stuff, so I have heard. The youngest species ever admitted to the diplomatic concord." Kixandra's device chimed softly, and she glanced at it before continuing. "Tell me, Marcus Chen of Earth, what brings you to seek conversation with the galaxy's most reviled representative?" The casual way she spoke of her status made Marcus wince. "You're not reviled by me, and honestly, I don't understand what everyone's problem is. You seem perfectly nice." "Perfectly nice?" She tilted her head, studying his face with those striking violet eyes. "You truly do not see it, do you? The horror that I represent to their aesthetic sensibilities?" Marcus looked at her more carefully, trying to understand what the other species found so repulsive. Her features were sharp and angular, true, but there was an elegant symmetry to them. Her scales caught the light beautifully, shifting between deep purple and midnight blue. Her build was slight but athletic, suggesting strength beneath the formal diplomatic robe she wore. "I see someone who's probably way out of my league," he said honestly, then immediately felt his face flush red. "I mean, that came out wrong. I just meant you're obviously intelligent and important, and I'm just a junior observer who spills coffee on himself most mornings." Kixandra's laugh was genuine this time, musical even through the translator. "Out of your league? Oh, Marcus Chen, if only you knew how wrong you are." Before he could ask what she meant, a commotion erupted near the main presentation area. The Corvin delegation was engaged in heated discussion with the ceremony officials, their translated voices carrying across the hall. "This is an insult to the entire summit," declared the lead Corvin. "The Zephyrians mock our traditions by sending such a creature. The Zephyrian choice is unconventional," agreed an Etherian diplomat. But perhaps we should focus on the other candidates. Marcus felt anger flare in his chest. He started to stand, ready to march over and give them a piece of his mind. But Kixandra caught his arm with surprising strength. "Do not," she said quietly. "You will only make things worse for yourself and your species. I can't just sit here and listen to them talk about you like that. You can and you will, because that is the reality of my existence in this galaxy." Her grip on his arm tightened slightly. "I am used to such treatment. You should not risk your diplomatic standing for someone you barely know." Marcus settled back down, but he could feel frustration radiating through him. "This is insane. What exactly makes you so terrible by their standards anyway?" Kixandra was quiet for a long moment, her fingers absently tracing patterns on her device's surface. "It is not just my appearance, though that is certainly part of it. In galactic society, physical beauty is directly correlated with genetic fitness, social standing, and cultural advancement. The more beautiful a species appears to the galactic standard, the more civilized and worthy of respect they are considered. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Is it? Does your own species not make similar judgments?" Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. She had a point. Humans absolutely made judgments based on appearance, even if they tried to pretend they didn't. "But there's more to it," Kixandra continued. "The Zephyrian Empire has long been considered a collection of savage worlds on the galactic periphery. We are tolerated because we control valuable resources and maintain powerful fleets. But we are not respected. Sending me to this summit was my government's way of acknowledging that we will never be accepted as equals." "So they sent you to make a political statement?" "They sent me because I am the smartest xenobiologist in the Empire, because I speak 17 languages fluently, and because I have spent my entire career studying galactic cultures." Her voice carried a bitter edge. "They also sent me because they knew my presence would remind everyone exactly what they think of us." Marcus stared at her in amazement. "You're a xenobiologist?" "Among other things. I have 3 advanced degrees and have published extensively on interspecies genetic compatibility and cultural adaptation." She gestured toward her device. "I was reviewing my notes on human physiology when you approached, actually. Your species is fascinating from a biological standpoint." "What kind of notes?" Kixandra's expression became slightly embarrassed. "Academic curiosity only, I assure you. Humans are the first species admitted to the Concord, whose physical parameters fall so far outside the established beauty norms. Your features are considered quite exotic by most standards, though not in a negative way." "Exotic how?" "Well, your skin is remarkably smooth compared to most species, and your facial structure is more rounded than the angular beauty standard. Your eyes are considered small but expressive, and your hair is a completely unique feature among sapient species." She paused, studying his face. "The academic community has been quite interested in how your species will adapt to galactic social expectations." Marcus found himself simultaneously flattered and slightly disturbed by being analyzed like a lab specimen. "And what's your professional opinion?" "My professional opinion is that your species' approach to beauty and social interaction is refreshingly direct. Most galactic cultures have elaborate protocols for aesthetic evaluation and social hierarchy. You simply walked over and started a conversation. Is that good or bad? It is unprecedented. And frankly, it is the kindest thing anyone has done for me in years." The sincerity in her voice made Marcus's chest tight with emotion. Here was someone brilliant and accomplished, reduced to gratitude for basic human decency. "Listen," he said, making another of his famous impulsive decisions. "I know I'm supposed to be observing, not participating, but would you like to get out of here? Maybe find somewhere quieter to talk?" Kixandra looked surprised. "You would be seen leaving with me. Your reputation would be damaged." "My reputation will survive. Besides, I'd rather spend time with someone interesting than watch a bunch of shallow politicians play dress-up." For a moment, he thought she would refuse. Then that smile returned, transforming her features once again. "Very well, Marcus Chen, but I choose the location. There are things about this station you should see if you truly wish to understand galactic society." As they rose to leave, Marcus noticed several delegates watching them with expressions ranging from disgust to fascination. An Etherian ambassador actually approached another human diplomat, clearly reporting on Marcus's unprecedented breach of protocol. Marcus didn't care. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Station, he felt like he was doing something worthwhile. Kixiandra led Marcus through corridors he'd never seen before, past the gleaming diplomatic quarters and into the station's working levels. Here the polished surfaces gave way to functional metal and humming machinery. The artificial gravity felt different too, slightly lighter as if they were moving toward the station's outer rim. "Where are we going?" Marcus asked, struggling to keep up with her surprisingly quick pace. "To see the truth behind the beautiful facade," she replied, her scaled hand trailing along the corridor wall. "Every station like this has two faces. The one they show to diplomats and the one where the real work happens." They passed through a security checkpoint where a bored-looking Corvin guard barely glanced at their credentials. Beyond lay a vast chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The space stretched for what seemed like kilometers, filled with beings of species he'd never encountered. Some were clearly laborers, their bodies adapted for heavy work. Others appeared to be technicians, their multiple arms or specialized appendages perfect for delicate machinery maintenance. "Welcome to the underlevels," Kixiandra said, gesturing at the bustling activity around them. "This is where your food is prepared, your air is recycled, and your comfortable diplomatic quarters are maintained." Marcus stared in amazement. "I had no idea this existed." "Of course not. The beautiful species prefer not to think about the unglamorous work that sustains their lifestyle." She guided him to an observation platform overlooking the main work floor. "Look carefully." "What do you see?" Marcus studied the workers below. They were certainly different from the polished delegates he'd observed in the Grand Hall, but they moved with purpose and obvious skill. Their work appeared complex and technically demanding. "They look like they know what they're doing," he said. "They are among the most skilled technicians in the galaxy," Kixiandra confirmed. "That crew there maintains the station's quantum stabilizers. Without them, this entire structure would collapse into subspace within hours. Those workers over there manage the atmospheric processing that keeps dozens of different species breathing comfortably in the same environment." "But I don't understand. If they're so important, why are they hidden down here?" Kixiandra's expression grew sad. "Because they are not beautiful by galactic standards. The undergull with their multiple eyes and tentacle arms are considered disturbing. The Rocken appear too primitive with their stone-like skin and massive builds. The Silthari move in ways that most species find unsettling." As if to illustrate her point, one of the undergull technicians glided past their platform. Marcus saw the being's face clearly for the first time. Multiple large eyes arranged in a complex pattern, skin that seemed to shift between textures, and yes, several tentacle-like appendages that moved with precise, graceful motions. By the standards Marcus had observed in the Grand Hall, he supposed the being might be considered strange. But watching them work, he saw only competence and intelligence. "This is insane," Marcus muttered. "They're running the entire station, but they're treated like they're invisible?" "Not invisible. Deliberately hidden. The diplomatic levels exist to maintain the illusion that galactic civilization is populated entirely by beautiful, refined beings. The reality is that most actual work is done by species that don't meet aesthetic standards." Kixiandra led him deeper into the underlevels, past workshops where beings crafted art of stunning complexity, laboratories where researchers pursued cutting-edge science, and social areas where different species mingled freely without regard for appearance hierarchies. "It's like a completely different world down here," Marcus observed. "In many ways, it is. Down here, competence matters more than beauty. Intelligence is valued over symmetrical features. The undergull you saw earlier holds 6 advanced degrees and has revolutionized quantum mechanics. That Rocken over there is a poet whose works are treasured across 17 systems." They paused at a small cafe where beings of various species shared meals and conversation. Marcus noticed something immediately different about the atmosphere. It was relaxed, friendly, genuinely social in a way the diplomatic levels weren't. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked. Kixiandra ordered drinks for both of them from a vendor whose species Marcus couldn't identify. The being's face was a fascinating arrangement of what might have been flowers, and their voice sounded like wind chimes. "Because you treated me with kindness without knowing anything about me except that others considered me ugly," she said, settling at a small table. "I wanted you to understand that your instincts were correct. The surface judgments made by galactic society are not just cruel. They are foolish." Marcus sipped his drink, which tasted like cinnamon and starlight. "But you said you were sent to the summit as a political statement. Doesn't that mean your own government considers you ugly too?" Kixiandra's expression grew complex. My government is complicated. The Zephyrian Empire includes dozens of worlds with very different cultures. Some of our member species are considered beautiful by galactic standards, others are not. Our leadership decided long ago that we would rather be respected for our strength and intelligence than beg for acceptance based on appearance. So sending you was a way of saying that we refuse to play their beauty games. I was chosen not despite my appearance, but because my qualifications are undeniable. I am the most accomplished xenobiologist in our empire, regardless of how I look. Marcus felt a surge of admiration for her. That's actually pretty badass. Badass? The translator struggled with the term. It means brave, tough, admirable, taking a stand for what's right even when it's difficult. Kixandra's laugh was warm. Then yes, I suppose it was badass, though it has made my life rather lonely at times. What do you mean? I spend most of my time in isolation. My own species finds me too intellectual, too focused on my research. Other species find me too ugly to associate with. I exist in a space between worlds, accepted by none. The sadness in her voice made Marcus's heart ache. That sounds awful. It has its compensations. My research is fulfilling, and I have made important discoveries about interspecies compatibility that would not have been possible if I had spent my time in social pursuits. Interspecies compatibility. Kixandra's eyes brightened with enthusiasm. It is my life's work. Understanding how different species can coexist, adapt to each other, even form meaningful relationships across biological boundaries. Most researchers focus on the obvious incompatibilities, but I study the possibilities. What kind of possibilities? Well, for example, your species and mine share more biological commonalities than anyone would expect. Similar atmospheric requirements, compatible nutritional needs, even complementary psychological traits. Marcus felt his cheeks warm. Complementary how? Humans appear to value individual expression and emotional directness. Zephyrians prize intellectual achievement and long-term thinking. In theory, the combination could be quite powerful. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted near the cafe entrance. Several security officers in official uniforms were scanning the area with obvious purpose. Ambassador Kixandra, one of them called out. You are required to return to the diplomatic levels immediately. Kixandra sighed. It appears our excursion has been noticed. As they stood to leave, Marcus realized he didn't want this conversation to end. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Station, he felt like he was connecting with someone on a genuine level. Will I see you again? He asked quietly. That depends, she replied, on whether you are willing to risk your career for someone the galaxy considers a monster. The security officers were approaching, their expressions stern and disapproving. Marcus made another of his impulsive decisions. I'll risk it, he said firmly. Besides, I think the galaxy's standards need some serious adjustment. The return journey to the diplomatic levels felt like ascending from reality into a performance. As they rode the transport lifts, Marcus watched Kixandra's posture change subtly, her shoulders drawing inward and her expression becoming carefully neutral. By the time they reached the polished corridors, she had transformed back into the isolated figure he'd first observed. The security officers deposited them at the Grand Hall's entrance, where Marcus immediately understood they were walking into trouble. Ambassador Harrison, the head of the human delegation, stood waiting with his arms crossed and his face set in the diplomatic equivalent of a thunderstorm. Mr. Chen, he said in the tone that had made junior diplomats tremble across 3 star systems. My office now. Marcus glanced at Kixandra, who gave him a barely perceptible nod of encouragement, before melting back into the crowd of delegates. As he followed Ambassador Harrison through the corridors, Marcus tried to prepare himself for what was coming. Harrison's office was a study in human efficiency, decorated with artifacts from Earth and various diplomatic gifts from their early contact missions. The ambassador gestured for Marcus to sit, then began pacing behind his desk. Do you have any idea what kind of position you've put us in? Harrison began without preamble. We've been in galactic society for exactly 18 months, Marcus. 18 months of careful relationship building, delicate negotiations, and establishing credibility as a serious diplomatic presence. Sir, you were just being seen in intimate conversation with the most socially toxic individual at this summit. Harrison's voice rose slightly before he caught himself and lowered it to a more diplomatic register. The Etherian delegation has already expressed concerns about human judgment. The Corvin are questioning whether we understand basic social protocols. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. Because I talked to someone who was being treated badly? Because you violated every standard of diplomatic behavior by associating with a deliberate provocation. Harrison pulled up a holographic display showing news feeds from various galactic networks. Look at this coverage, Marcus. Human delegate embraces galactic outcast. Earth's representative chooses ugliness over alliance. Diplomatic disaster as human ignores social norms. The headlines were brutal, but Marcus found himself less concerned with the media reaction than with the casual cruelty of the language being used. Ambassador, with respect, maybe the problem isn't that I talked to her. Maybe the problem is that everyone else is acting like shallow, prejudiced. Stop. Harrison held up a hand. Right there. That attitude is exactly why you're in trouble. You cannot apply human social values to galactic politics, Marcus. What seems like prejudice to you is actually a complex system of social organization that has maintained peace among dozens of species for centuries. Peace built on excluding anyone who doesn't meet arbitrary beauty standards. Harrison sat heavily in his chair. Marcus, listened to me carefully. I'm going to explain some things that weren't in your cultural briefings because we hoped you wouldn't need to know them. The ambassador's tone grew serious, almost paternal. Galactic society is not like human society. Physical appearance is not just about attractiveness. It's a reliable indicator of genetic stability, technological advancement, and cultural sophistication. Species that appear beautiful by galactic standards have typically evolved past aggression, developed advanced art and philosophy, and achieved stable social structures. And the ones who don't are typically younger civilizations that still struggle with violence, internal conflicts, and technological limitations. Harrison gestured toward the window overlooking the station. The Zephyrian Empire that Kixandra represents controls 37 worlds, Marcus, but they've been at war with someone continuously for the past 3 centuries. Their ugly appearance correlates directly with their inability to evolve beyond aggressive expansion. Marcus felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. But she's a scientist, a xenobiologist with multiple degrees. She's brilliant. I'm sure she is. Individual exceptions don't disprove the general rule. Harrison's expression softened slightly. Marcus, I understand your instincts. They're admirable even. But you're not just a private citizen anymore. Your actions reflect on all of humanity, and right now, you're making us look like naive idealists who don't understand how the galaxy really works. The conversation was interrupted by a chime from Harrison's communication system. He activated it, and the holographic image of a Corvin official appeared. Ambassador Harrison, the Corvin said without preamble, the Diplomatic Council requires clarification regarding your subordinate's behavior. Of course, Counselor. What specific clarification do you need? Does Mr. Chen's association with the Zephyrian representative indicate a shift in human diplomatic policy? Are you aligning yourselves with the aggressive periphery empires? Harrison's jaw tightened. Absolutely not. Mr. Chen acted independently and without authorization. Human policy remains focused on integration with core galactic civilization. Excellent. Then you will have no objection to Mr. Chen making a public statement, distancing himself from the Zephyrian representative. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. What kind of statement? A simple acknowledgement that your association was a cultural misunderstanding, the Corvin continued. That humans recognize and respect galactic social standards, and that you had no intention of insulting the summit by validating the Zephyrian provocation. The room fell silent except for the hum of the station's environmental systems. Marcus realized that every eye was on him waiting for his response. And if I refuse? He asked quietly. Ambassador Harrison answered before the Corvin could respond. Then your diplomatic career is over, and human credibility in galactic society takes a significant hit. Marcus thought about Kixandra sitting alone in that corner, ignored and dismissed despite her obvious intelligence and accomplishments. He thought about the thriving community in the underlevels, hidden away because they didn't meet aesthetic standards. He thought about all the brilliant, capable beings whose contributions were dismissed because of how they looked. I need some time to think about this, he said finally. The Corvin official's expression grew stern. Time is a luxury we cannot afford. The summit concludes tomorrow, and this matter must be resolved before then. After the Corvins signed off, Harrison studied Marcus with a mixture of frustration and sympathy. Marcus, I know this feels wrong to you, but sometimes diplomacy requires us to make compromises that go against our personal values for the greater good. What greater good? Perpetuating a system that judges people based on appearance? Ensuring that humanity has a place in galactic civilization? We need their technology, their trade networks, their protection. Earth is still vulnerable, Marcus. We can't afford to alienate the powers that keep us safe. Marcus stood slowly, his mind racing. I understand the stakes, Ambassador. I just need to figure out if I can live with myself after making this choice. As he left Harrison's office, Marcus realized he was facing the defining moment of his career and possibly his life. The safe choice was obvious. Apologize, distance himself from Kixandra, and preserve his future in the diplomatic corps. But somewhere in the back of his mind, his grandmother's voice whispered again about the importance of showing kindness to those who needed it most. The question was whether he had the courage to listen. Marcus spent the night walking the empty corridors of the human diplomatic quarters, wrestling with a decision that seemed to grow more complicated with every passing hour. By morning, he still hadn't reached a conclusion, but he knew he needed to see Kixandra again before making any public statements. He found her in the station's observation deck, a transparent dome that offered a spectacular view of the surrounding starfield. She stood silhouetted against the cosmic backdrop, her scaled skin catching reflections from distant suns. Even in profile, Marcus could see the tension in her posture. I wondered if you would come, she said without turning around. The galactic news feeds have been quite illuminating regarding your situation. Marcus joined her at the viewing window. I imagine they have. Your career will be destroyed if you do not denounce our association. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but Marcus caught an undertone of sadness. It would be foolish to sacrifice your future for someone you barely know. Maybe. But I've been thinking about what you showed me yesterday. All those people in the underlevels doing crucial work but kept hidden because they don't meet appearance standards. Marcus gestured toward the stars beyond the dome. If that's how galactic civilization really works, I'm not sure I want to be part of it. Kixandra finally turned to face him, her violet eyes searching his expression. You would truly risk everything based on principle? Apparently I would, though I should probably mention that I'm not just doing this out of noble idealism. Marcus felt his cheeks warm. I genuinely like you, Kixandra. You're brilliant, funny, passionate about your work, and you've shown me things about this galaxy I never would have discovered otherwise. Even though I am hideous by the standards of civilized species? Marcus studied her face carefully. The angular features that other species found so disturbing struck him as elegant and expressive. Her scales caught the starlight beautifully, and her eyes held depths that he found utterly captivating. I think galactic civilization's standards are seriously flawed, he said honestly. You're one of the most attractive people I've ever met. Kixandra's expression cycled through surprise, skepticism, and something that might have been hope. Your species truly sees beauty differently. We see individuals differently. Maybe that's what makes us human, or what will get your species destroyed, said a new voice from behind them. They turned to find Commander Vexhol, the Zephyrian military attaché, emerging from the dome's entrance. Unlike Kixandra's scaled features, Vexhol's appearance was more traditionally reptilian, with ridged skin and predatory yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the starlight. Commander, Kixandra said, straightening into a more formal posture, I was not expecting you. The Imperial Council has been monitoring the diplomatic situation, Vexhol replied, his gaze shifting between them. Young Marcus Chen's association with you has created opportunities. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the dome's environmental systems. What kind of opportunities? The kind that could reshape galactic politics, Vexhol said with a smile that revealed rows of sharp teeth. Tell me, human, do you truly believe that appearance-based discrimination is wrong? Yes, absolutely. And you would be willing to take action to oppose it? Marcus glanced at Kixandra, who was watching the exchange with growing alarm. What kind of action are you talking about? The Zephyrian Empire has long been excluded from the inner circles of galactic power because we refuse to conform to aesthetic standards. But if we had an ally from a rising species like humanity, Vexhol gestured toward the viewing window, we could force changes to the entire system. Commander, Kixandra interrupted, Mr. Chen is not a military asset. He is a diplomatic observer with no authority to make policy decisions. But he could become more, Vexhul countered. With proper support and resources, he could return to Earth as an advocate for alliance with the Zephyrian Empire. Together, our species could challenge the established order. Marcus felt like he was standing at the edge of a precipice. You're talking about some kind of political revolution. I am talking about justice, Vexhul said intensely. For centuries, the so-called beautiful species have maintained power while keeping countless others marginalized. They control trade routes, dictate cultural norms, and exclude entire civilizations from meaningful participation in galactic society. By using military force, by using whatever means are necessary. The commander's eyes gleamed with zealous conviction. The current system will never change through diplomatic channels. The core species will never voluntarily surrender their advantages. Kixandra stepped between them, her expression fierce. Commander, this is exactly the kind of thinking that keeps us isolated. Violence only confirms their prejudices about peripheral species. Isolation has protected us, scientist, but it has also limited our potential. Vexhul's attention focused on Marcus again. Your species is uniquely positioned, human. You are new enough to avoid the established power structures, yet advanced enough to be taken seriously. With Zephyrian backing, you could become a voice for the oppressed across the galaxy. Marcus realized he was being recruited for something far larger and more dangerous than he had imagined. The simple choice between personal principles and diplomatic convenience had suddenly become a decision that could affect the balance of power among dozens of species. What exactly are you proposing? He asked carefully. Return to Earth. Share what you have learned about galactic society's true nature. Advocate for formal alliance with the Zephyrian Empire. Vexhul's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. We have technologies that could advance human civilization by centuries. Weapons that could protect your homeworld from any threat. Resources that could eliminate scarcity forever. In exchange for what? Military cooperation when the time comes to restructure galactic civilization. The dome fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Marcus felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on him. Refuse, and he would be abandoning not just Kixandra but countless beings who suffered under the current system. Accept, and he would be setting humanity on a path toward galactic conflict. I need time to think, Marcus said finally. Time is limited, Vexhul warned. The summit ends tomorrow, and opportunities like this do not arise often. After the commander left, Marcus and Kixandra stood in uncomfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. He is not wrong about the injustices of the current system, Kixandra said eventually, but his methods would lead to war. And war would make everything worse for everyone, Marcus replied. But doing nothing means accepting a system that treats you like a monster for no good reason. There might be another way, Kixandra said slowly. Something that does not require violence or political revolution. Marcus turned toward her, hope flickering in his chest. What are you thinking? Something that would require you to trust me completely, and something that would change both our lives forever. The determination in her voice made Marcus's heart race with anticipation and fear. Whatever she was planning, he suspected it would be just as dangerous as Vexhul's proposal, but in a completely different way. The final day of the Beautification Summit arrived with the kind of pomp and ceremony that made Marcus's head spin. The Grand Hall had been transformed into an even more elaborate showcase, with holographic displays highlighting the achievements of the various candidates and their species. Diplomatic marriages were being announced, trade agreements finalized, and cultural exchange programs established. Marcus stood with the human delegation, acutely aware of the disapproving glances from other species and the tension radiating from Ambassador Harrison. He still hadn't made his decision about the public statement, and time was running out. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, announced the ceremony master, we now come to the final presentation phase, where candidates may make personal statements regarding their hopes for galactic cooperation. One by one, the beautiful representatives took the stage. The Etherian spoke eloquently about art and enlightenment. The Corvin delivered a precision speech about honor and structure. Even the plant-like Verdani swayed in, patterns that somehow conveyed deep philosophical concepts about growth and harmony. Then came Kixandra's turn. Marcus watched her approach the presentation platform. with his heart pounding. She moved with quiet dignity, her formal robes flowing around her scaled form. When she reached the center stage, she paused, looking out at the assembled delegates with those striking violet eyes. "Honored representatives," she began, her translated voice carrying clearly through the hall. "I stand before you as someone who has lived her entire life outside the boundaries of accepted beauty. I have been dismissed, ignored, and treated as a political provocation simply because of how I appear to your aesthetic sensibilities." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not the typical diplomatic speech they expected. But I have also had the privilege of seeing galactic society from perspectives denied to those who fit within standard beauty norms. I have worked alongside the brilliant beings who maintain this very station, whose contributions go unrecognized because they do not meet appearance standards. I have researched the incredible diversity of life that exists beyond the narrow parameters of conventional attractiveness. She paused, her gaze finding Marcus in the crowd, and I have discovered that true compatibility between beings has nothing to do with external appearance and everything to do with shared values, mutual respect, and emotional connection. The hall fell silent. Even the ceremony master seemed uncertain how to respond to such an unconventional presentation. "Which is why," Kixandra continued, "I am withdrawing from consideration for any diplomatic marriages or cultural exchanges based on appearance standards." Gasps echoed through the assembly. This was unprecedented. Candidates simply did not withdraw from the summit. Instead, I proposed to demonstrate a different model of interspecies cooperation. One based on genuine partnership rather than aesthetic compatibility. She gestured toward the human delegation, and Marcus felt every eye in the hall focus on him. "Marcus Chen of Earth, would you join me on stage?" Time seemed to stop. Marcus was dimly aware of Ambassador Harrison grabbing his arm, of shocked whispers erupting throughout the hall, of Commander Vexhul's predatory smile from across the room. But all he really saw was Kixandra, standing alone on that platform, offering him a choice that would define everything that came after. Marcus gently removed Harrison's hand from his arm and walked toward the stage. The silence that greeted his arrival was deafening. He could feel the weight of galactic attention focused on this moment, on two beings who represented everything the summit was not supposed to be about. "Marcus Chen," Kixandra said formally, "you have shown me kindness without regard for my appearance or species. You have treated me as an individual worthy of respect and friendship. In doing so, you have demonstrated values that I believe could reshape how species interact across the galaxy." She turned to address the assembly. "The current system of galactic civilization is built on exclusion and superficial judgment. It wastes the potential of countless brilliant beings and perpetuates conflicts between the so-called beautiful core worlds and the supposedly savage periphery. This system serves no one except those who benefit from maintaining artificial hierarchies." Marcus found his voice. "What are you proposing?" "I am proposing that we form a partnership," Kixandra said, her eyes meeting his. "Not a political alliance or military cooperation, but something more fundamental. A demonstration that beings from different species can work together as equals, can care for each other despite physical differences, can build something new that transcends old prejudices." The implications hit Marcus like a physical force. She wasn't just talking about friendship or professional collaboration. "You're talking about," he began. "I am talking about choosing each other," she said simply. "Publicly, officially, permanently, showing the galaxy that connection between beings is possible across any barrier, if we have the courage to reject artificial limitations." The hall erupted in chaos. Delegates leaped to their feet, some in outrage, others in fascination. The ceremony master was frantically consulting with senior officials. Ambassador Harrison looked like he was considering physical restraint, but Marcus barely heard the commotion. All his attention was focused on Kixandra, on the courage it must have taken to make this proposal, on the incredible risk she was taking by putting her heart on display in front of the entire galactic diplomatic community. "The galaxy will never accept it," he said quietly. "The galaxy will have no choice but to acknowledge it," she replied. "You cannot unsee what challenges your preconceptions. Some beings will be disgusted, others will be curious, but all will be forced to confront the possibility that their assumptions about beauty and compatibility are wrong." Marcus looked out at the chaos surrounding them, at the beautiful delegates who had never faced rejection, at the hidden prejudices that kept entire civilizations marginalized. He thought about the beings in the underlevels, about Commander Vexhol's plans for violent revolution, about the choice between accepting an unjust system or fighting to change it. Then he looked back at Kixandra, brilliant and brave and somehow beautiful in ways the galaxy couldn't understand yet. "If we do this," he said, "there's no going back. Our careers, our reputations, our entire futures will be tied to making this work." "I know," she said softly. "Are you willing to risk everything for the possibility that we might be able to build something better?" Marcus thought about his grandmother's advice about kindness, about the mistake that had brought him to this moment, about the choice between safety and doing what felt right. He reached out and took Kixandra's scaled hand in his, feeling the warmth of her skin and the strength of her fingers. "Yes," he said loudly enough for the entire hall to hear. "I choose you. I choose us. I choose the possibility that the galaxy can learn to see beyond surface appearances to what really matters." The chaos in the hall reached a crescendo, but Marcus hardly noticed. He was too busy looking into Kixandra's violet eyes, seeing joy and relief and hope reflected there. They had just made the biggest mistake of their lives, and somehow it felt like the most right decision either of them had ever made. Later, historians would mark this moment as the beginning of the Great Reformation, when galactic society slowly began to evolve beyond its rigid beauty standards. But in that moment, Marcus and Kixandra were simply two beings who had found each other across impossible odds and chosen love over fear. And perhaps, Marcus thought as he squeezed her hand gently, that was always how real change began, with someone willing to make a beautiful mistake.